Hello. And welcome to episode 22.
Hello.
Insert spooky vibe music right now because it is officially spooky season. What if we should do the sounds like it's freaking bats? I love bats. Well, in the spirit of spooky season, we kind of picked a harder, scarier, gross vibes all around topic.
Very spooky, very scary.
Very spooky, very scary. Maybe not in the ways that some people would hope.
Right.
You know, some people like to be scared.
For fun.
For fun. But I feel like our topic this episode is not something anyone would hope to endure.
Correct.
Or experience in any way, shape, or form. And that would be manipulation and gaslighting. Eek, eek, eek.
Yeah, scary vibes.
Scary vibes, gross vibes. This episode is going to feel weird.
Yes, but also very important to talk about.
Yes.
Like, breaking the stigma.
Yes, breaking the stigma down. What does this actually look like? What is manipulation and gaslighting?
Yeah.
Like, what can we do if we're literally having someone in our life that is actively manipulating and gaslighting us?
Yeah, what are their signs?
What are the signs?
What are the triggers? How do we heal?
Yeah, there's a lot in this episode.
Yes.
Also, just think it's funny that at the start of coming up with this outline, you were like, it's going to be a short episode. And then I came in and said, added like 8 pages worth of script. So here we are, fans. Like,
it's okay.
Get ready.
It's juicy. It's good. It's informative.
Yes. Okay, well, I guess let's get into it. I feel like I need to meditate before we insert pause here with meditation music. Okay.
But on that note, if you need to take a pause.
Yes.
During this episode, take a pause.
Take it.
You know.
Yep. Your time is yours. Take what you need. Yeah. Don't consume this all in one setting if you can't, because it's a lot and it's very triggering. So we understand, we give you permission, and we hope you give yourself permission as you listen to this.
Boom.
And with that, you have been warned.
Yep.
So let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay, well, in this episode, we are going to tackle the insidious, the psychological tactics that often leave people doubting their own reality. And this is essentially what manipulation and gaslighting's whole purpose is. And we are going to talk all about that and what that looks like, and also just how it is used as an element of power and control.
Yeah.
So prepare yourselves for that. But I wanted to start because I found this, I guess, a newer term. I've never heard of it necessarily.
I've never heard of it either.
And I don't think it's something that is officially a title or category or scientifically studied thing. Yeah. But it's this element of dark psychology.
Whoa.
It's just so interesting to me because I'm psychology in itself, right, is about understanding, awareness of
study of individuals,
to help us grow, to help us know about ourselves. Yeah. But the idea there could be dark psychology about this is creepy, but it almost gives me the vibe of there's always too much of something, right? There is that limit, that boundary. So what we're going to talk about today kind of falls into this kind of dark psychology realm. And so just to give you a really boring-ish kind of definition, again, this is not a scientific thing, but what I found was dark psychology is referring to the study, the application of psychological principles that manipulate, influence, or control people in harmful ways. And it explores how individuals use these tactics, such as manipulation, coercion, and deception, to achieve their own goals at the expense of others, which just screams parasitic type relationship vibes that we all learned about. And I'm already feeling gross in my skin.
Yeah, we're gonna need some sage and chakras cleaning after this.
Literally, though, a whole massage. So again, dark psychology is not recognized as a scientific field, but rather it's just a term that's kind of being used to describe the negative and often really unethical practices and tactics that people use around this element of power control over individuals. So fun.
So let's touch on power and control a little bit. Like, rearrange it a little bit. With the tactics that we're going to talk about today, it's often used by someone who feels like they need that power and control over you. And I don't know. Typically, what I've seen and what I've learned is that people that are really, like, come across as powerful or, like, need that control often are feeling the opposite inside. Like, very helpless or powerless. And when someone feels that immensely, then their systems usually go back to the things that were used maybe against them growing up, or, like, in a traumatic way. Like, the manipulation and the gaslighting.
Yeah.
And not only by, like, other people. It can be, like, yourself, too. Like, gaslighting yourself.
Literally. I mean, raise your hand if you've gaslit yourself. Every day.
Yeah. But it's reminding me of, like, our talk about domestic violence and sexual assault survivors with Cindy. Y'all should go check out that episode.
That was a really good episode.
And we discussed, like, the power and control wheel.
Yes.
So if you want to learn more about that.
That is still our top rated episode to date. That is our highest listened to, which I think says a lot, right? About, like, something about the power and control aspect has people resonating and wanting to listen and learn more about. So,
yeah.
You know?
So a little plug for ourselves, yay. So let's get into some, like, definitions of manipulation and gaslighting, like how they're categorized and described in the field. So manipulation is a psychological type of social influence that aims to change the behavior or perception of others through abusive, deceptive, and underhanded tactics, which we'll talk more in detail about. By advancing the interest of the manipulator, often at another's expense, such methods could be considered exploitative.
Every time you said that, I thought it was right, even though it was different.
It's different. You know?
Exploitative. Is that it? I don't know.
This is the part of the pod where we all laugh together, listeners. Okay, y'all know what I'm saying. Abusive or devious and deceptive. Okay. Manipulation can be subtle
or overt.
Overt, meaning, like, obvious. Okay.
Yes.
So obvious.
Right. Like, you can, it's like the thing of, like, you can detect it, or, like, you have no, like, you don't even know, like, this person is doing this, saying this, and their goal is to manipulate me, you know?
Okay, so this involves emotional tactics designed by coerce, confuse, or weaken a person's ability to make decisions freely. Basically, to gain power over someone else.
Yes.
For your own interests and for your own, like...
Right. Yes. It's not like, again, back to that parasitic relationship, right? Like, it's being done for the benefit of the person who's manipulating without really caring or thinking about the impact of the person. I guess manipulati? Who's the one that's, like, being manipulated? Like, here.
Victim,
yes.
And it's making me think sometimes of, like, manipulation or hearing stories of, like, people being manipulated, and, like, the manipulator just does it because they find enjoyment in another person's pain.
Yes, unfortunately, like, there are those people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It is wild. That could be a whole other podcast, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to gaslighting. Gaslighting is defined as a form of emotional and psychological abuse where the manipulator causes the victim to question their own reality. The goal is to destabilize the victim's sense of self and make them dependent on the gaslighter for their perception of reality. Again, another example of power and control.
Yeah, literally. Just gross vibes all around. Yeah. I think, too, of, like, I feel like lighting, like, being gaslit is definitely, like, one of those terms, like, self-care. That's being, like, kind of thrown out a lot more. Like, I'm hearing it a lot more. I feel like people are talking about it a lot more. And it's, like, in essence, this idea of gaslighting someone because either you don't want to be called out or you can't be accountable, right, for your behavior, and wanting the other person to feel like the problem, right, or in the wrong. Like, essentially, it's like that whole sense of almost like disillusionment of like, I want you to question yourself and everything so that you don't question me or call me out, and you see yourself as the problem versus me as the problem, because I can't be the problem. You know what I mean?
Yes, like I can't be wrong.
Right. Yes. Or even like the sense of the idea of being wrong or being like looked at as like imperfect or wrong feels like such a dangerous like threat to me, right? For like whatever reason. Again, whole other episode. Maybe we're kind of getting into narcissistic tendencies a little bit, but
for sure
it is like it is thinking about just like the person that is gaslighting, right, or manipulating. It is a fascinating thing to think about of just the mentality or benefits, quote unquote, that are being almost like looked at of like, I will do this because I need this.
Very
you know,
self-absorbed. This is where like selfish gets a negative connotation. I feel like.
You know? Right. Well, because then it's like I think we hear this all the time when we talk to like clients about is like the idea of being selfish, right? Feels like if I do anything for myself, then that's selfish. And it's like, hold up. No, you have every right to take care of yourself and do things for yourself. But it's like when it crosses that line of like, I'm doing things just for my benefit, even when they harm other people, and I don't give a thought or care about harming another person, is when it is that too much part, like I was talking about earlier, like that dark psychology part of it.
Yes.
You know? Yes. So it's like that, I guess, like imbalance of it in a way.
For sure. Yeah.
So anyway, though, let's kind of talk about like maybe even just think about some common manipulation strategies that are used. Yes. And as we're kind of talking about this, I really want our listeners to take note and notice as we're talking about these, if our body responds, if any thoughts come up, if anything seems to resonate, or we have a light bulb moment. Because I think that could be maybe a little indicator, a little yellow, red flag indicator that somebody, some situation in my life or circumstances right now, maybe this is happening, right? Maybe I'm doing this to someone else, or maybe someone is doing this to me, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So just kind of be aware. Let's build some awareness as we go through this. So this list is not extensive. I'm sure there are other things and other terms, but I think this was a well-rounded list of common just like strategies for manipulation that we see. So we'll start off with guilt tripping. And I think we've all heard this, right? Like, again, I think it's like one of those kind of terms that's thrown around more commonly, you know, like, and so thinking about what is guilt tripping, like this is really just a tactic where someone is going to make another person feel guilty, right, in order to influence their behavior, right? So if I want you to do something, or maybe even think some way, or have an opinion in a certain type of context, then I'm going to make you feel guilty, right, in order to change that, or to get out of you what I want you to say, do, whatever, right? Like, and I mean, it honestly makes me think of like, we see this from a young age.
Yes, I was literally thinking that. I'm like, okay, teenage, maybe it's stereotypical, but like teenage adolescent Ash definitely was guilt tripping.
1,000%.
Parents and uncles. And
yes. Really, like, if Grandmas. You loved me, right? Like, you would buy me this kind of thing. You know, if you want me to be cool.
Make me do that.
Exactly. It also makes me think of, like, the playground kind of dynamic of, like, there was always some kind of guilt tripping manipulation, it felt like, on the playground. So it's, like, interesting to even think about, too, of, like, even from a young age, we're kind of like taught these manipulation strategies, right? Like, so maybe it's a lot more common, right, than we think about in terms of like how ingrained is this in our society and how we operate and learn things. You know what I mean?
Yes. And it's giving very enabling behavior, because I can see, like, in, like, older adults or, like, older clients that I've had, like, their elders guilt tripping them.
Yeah.
And to, like, enabling them in, like, bad behavior, like,
oh, yes. Yeah.
Can you do this for me even though I'm not supposed to? Or, like, you don't love me enough.
Right. Yeah.
Like, things like that. And I'm like, hold on. Like.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Helpless vibes.
Yes. Very much so. Right? Yeah. I feel like that could be a whole other episode too. Yeah. But essentially, like, the whole premise of it, right, is that we are trying to make someone feel, like, down or feel responsible or accountable, like, in guilt for something, which will make them, like, do a certain thing that we want them to do. So, guilt tripping. Next one is lying, right? I mean, I think this is pretty standard, right? Like, right? We will often lie and attempt to control or coerce others, right? Like, it might also be lying to avoid blame or consequences for our actions, and that's a big thing that we'll continue to talk about in this episode, is a sense of, like, I can't or won't take responsibility or accountability, and the other person has to be the problem. I can't be the problem. I'm the victim, right? And so a lot of these strategies are things that I do is, like, with that intention, right? Like, even if we don't think about it like that, like, that's essentially what it is. Next one is flattery. So I feel like this one kind of gets, like, confused a lot, because, like, sometimes we hear flattery as, like, more of a positive thing, right? Of, like, oh, I'm flattered, right? Like, I'm flattered that you would say this. But I think, again, it goes back to, like, too much of something is not good. And also thinking about for flattery is, what is the intentionality behind it, right?
Yes.
Like, if I am, I don't know, giving, like, so much, like, admiration and praise to you, right? But I'm doing it because I want something from it. Like, I want you to do something for me, or I want you to then return that to me. Then the intentionality is not to just, like, give that positive energy, right? Like, the intentionality then is, I'm doing or saying this because I need something from you.
Right.
You know, which, again, like, if we think about that, is not with the best intentionality for it.
No. It's giving, like, Game of Thrones or, like, other shows that I've seen, like, people just being very nice, or, like,
yeah, it's like the sucking up.
Yes. Sucking up. Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. Right? Like, it's like, I'm doing this because I'm trying to, like, almost feed your ego to get something from you out of this. So, again, kind of something that I think it can be doubly defined, but I think it's, again, about the intentionality or not of it. Right. The next one is projection. So this is when one person claims an emotion that they're feeling, like, for example, jealousy, right, is actually being experienced by someone else. This also makes me think of, like, countertransference, right, in the mental health world of things. Yeah. And so, like, to give an example on this, right, like, if I am someone with manipulative tendencies or behaviors, I might cause or create some type of tension, drama, but then I'm going to blame someone else for creating that energy and drama.
Right. Like,
right?
if the other person only didn't do that, or...
Right. Yes.
Wouldn't be this way, or...
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. So,
then
very much so. Right. Yes. Yes, again, like that lack of accountability, a lack of responsibility over my actions kind of thing. Next one is called moving the goalposts, which I think can be a lot of different things. This was just the title and example for this one that I found. But it's this idea of, like, no matter how much I show up for someone who actively, like, manipulates me, the expectations will continue to move or change. So, like, let's say, for example, right, you and me, if I tell you, like, okay, Ash, like, if you text me every day checking in, right, like, good morning, then you're gonna be, like, my top bestie, and then you're gonna be the one that I take on a all-inclusive resort vacation. And then we get to the end of the week, and you've done that, like, you've texted me and checked in, and then I'm like, well, actually, it's this, but also like, you would have to buy my groceries for the next 2 weeks. So it's like this consistent, like, I do this because that's what you say, like, you have to do to get this, but then that keeps moving because it's never enough. Right? And so it's like this constant sense of, like, getting stuff out of people.
Ooh, or like, yeah, great, you sent the text every day, but you didn't send, like, a smiley face or emoji.
Yes!
Every single time.
Yes! It's like this concept of, like, bringing up rules and regulations after the fact when, like, that wasn't spoken, but it was like, that's actually probably getting into the gaslighting realm too. Right? But, like, I mean, again, like, these are very much interchangeable in a lot of ways. But, like, that just that concept of, like, nothing seems to ever be good enough and the rules keep changing kind of stuff. Next one is triangulation. This one is actually really interesting when this came up because I don't think I really thought of it this way, but it makes so much sense in the, like, I thought of, like, couples therapy realm of stuff. Because triangulation is when someone involves a third party person to either, like, behave in a way that's manipulative or coercive, right, to someone else, or their presence alone, right, is kind of used as that manipulation and coercion to get the partner, the other person, whoever, to do something. And this often does exactly what it intends to do, which feels like it creates competition, it creates jealousy, it creates insecurity and resentment, right? Because it's like, let's say, for example, I want you, I don't know, to, like, do something, and you're like, no, like, I don't want to do that. I get Hun involved. And I'm like, Hun, I want Ash to do this. I think it's good for her. Yeah. Right? Even if he doesn't agree with me, the fact that I bring him into this is going to make you feel some type of way. Right?
Yes.
And I think that can look like a lot of different things. But the sense is like, in order to manipulate and coerce you, I'm going to bring someone else that's important to you, or that I know, like, you would have maybe, like, a relationship with, or, like, listen to, or have some kind of, like, I don't know, like, get some kind of empathy, support from, you know, that kind of hits that mark of, you're going to listen to them, right? Like, or that's going to almost, like, manipulate and motivate you to feel like you have to some degree.
Right.
You know?
That makes sense. Yeah. I can see that happening also with, like, parents and a child.
Yes!
You know? Or
yes.
especially with, like, in divorce families, or parents that are divorced.
Like, I'm gonna tell your dad. Your dad's gonna call you, right? Like, yeah, very much so. And again,
or the kid being like, oh, but mom lets me.
Yes!
You know?
Yes! Like, this concept of, like, did you ask your mom? And they're like, well, yeah. Even though they didn't, right? Yes. Like, again, there's so many things with this. Next one is exploitation. This one, again, I think is pretty, like, standard. Like, we hear about this a lot. So really, it's looking at what is someone's, like, weakness, insecurities, or fears, and using that against them, right? Like, I'm using that information that was probably shared with me in a really, like, vulnerable moment, or I got that information not willingly from the person, and then I'm going to use that to manipulate you, again, to get what I want out of you. And the last one, I love this term. Again, it's, like, such a big thing coming up right now, is love bombing. Yeah. And it sounds so like it would be sweet, but it's not. It's not. It is not sweet. And honestly, I think Cindy talked about this. I don't remember if she called it love bombing, but essentially she was talking about, like, this is actually a really big part and first step in an emotionally, physically, all kinds of abusive relationships.
That's so true.
Right? Of, like, the love bombing. And what that is that someone is going to overwhelm or go in excessive, right, with affection, attention, flattery, in order to really gain this sense of control or influence over someone. And what it does is it creates a really intense emotional connection between you and that person, to where the other person now is going to feel like they can let their guard down, right? They're going to be more vulnerable. And that's exactly what the manipulator wants, because then when you do that, then I have the power control in this. And now maybe I know, your insecurities, your fears, maybe things that you don't want other people to know, and I can hold it against you and use it like dangling a little fish, you know?
Yes.
I don't know why I said dangle a fish. That's not appealing.
I mean, but it resonates.
For the cats, I will dangle a fish. So those are some really common things for manipulation that we see.
So those tactics and strategies are like within this next portion we're going to touch on, which is the stages.
Yes.
Okay. So one stage, or the first stage, is flattery, which we touched on a little bit already.
Right.
Which is like the person's manipulative behaviors puts on this facade of like being kind, caring, helpful. And they may act like they want to help you with something or anything you need, but in reality, they're just trying to get what they want from you.
Yes. Yes. And you can see where, like, even the manipulation strategies before, like the love bombing, the flattery, like certain elements of that will be in this stage, right? Of like setting it up for you to trust them and you to feel like, oh, this person really cares for me and they have best intentions for me and I can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And they want that, you know, because then you're going to put your guard down and then they're going to be able to power and control dynamics.
So love bombing would be in this flattery stage.
Yes, very much so.
Yep. Okay. So the second one is isolation. The person who manipulates may start to isolate you from your friends and family. They might try to convince you that your loved ones don't understand you or want to control you. The goal is to usually separate you from the people who might spot the manipulation.
Exactly.
OMG. Literally.
This one's always such a, like, it's always a gross one to talk about, right?
So, yes.
Because I think in a lot of ways that manipulators do a really great job of portraying their isolation tactics as, like, I care for you more than anyone else, and everyone else either, like, doesn't treat you right or all these things, and it's like, actually, like, what you're doing here is not because you care if your partner's parents may be like really unhealthy. It's that you don't want anyone else to be able to call you out and tell the victim, like, this is not okay.
Right.
So you have to isolate. Again, that power and control element.
Yeah.
Because if I make you put your guard down and then I get you to, like, disconnect from these other people in your life, then guess who is the one person, right, that you depend on?
Yes, and you then inherently have that greater influence and power over them.
Exactly.
Actual yikes.
I know.
Next, we have devaluing and gaslighting. This is when someone who manipulates you tries to make you feel guilty or confused. So they might start telling you that you're ungrateful or that you're making them unhappy and that, like, you're the issue. But the purpose of this stage is to make you doubt yourself,
right,
your instincts and your decisions. It can be very difficult to break free from the manipulator's control at this stage.
Yes.
Because they've already been fueling, like, you know, your sense of self and, like, making you feel good and, like, being there for you or showing up in this way, but then you're not fully aware of their intent.
Yes.
Until it's too late.
Right. Right. Too late in the sense of, like, we're in it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that to seem like an ominous note.
I guess I meant too late of, like, you're already questioning
right,
yourself and you're, like, self-doubt and you don't know where to go from there. Like, you feel like this overwhelming sense of stuck because now you're isolated. This person that's supposed to be here supporting you is, like, telling you these, like, quotation mark negative things about you,
right?
But it's in the same breath of, like, trying to just get the claws in deeper of, like, you can only be okay if I say you're okay.
Right. Yeah. And I think too of, you know, at this stage too, this is where our sense of, like, what's real and what's not really goes out the window, because our image of what this person was because of how they love bombed us and, like, all the things in the beginning, and then, you know, made us, like, disconnect from all these people that they said were, like, harmful to us, And now we're at the stage of like, they're making me question if I even know like what's happening or if I can trust myself. So it is really hard because that's where the mind games are like really playing us.
Yeah. And I've often heard like sometimes it's more difficult for people to like spot and notice when you're in this stage if you've already experienced it or you've been shown this in your childhood. But I've also heard like people that have grown up with so much confidence and independence and like self-assured vibes can also fall prey to this as well.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I think too of like, I feel like what the hard part is that nobody really just wants to question someone's intentions or to be like, hey, you could be really trying to like mess me over right here. And like, especially if it's someone that you're like really attracted to, they say all the right things, right? Like, again, like they pour all this into you, like make you feel like, yes, they're this like perfect person. Like it can be hard to then be like, hold up. Like, is this person actually like trying to be healthy and helpful to me or not? Like it is hard, and I think that's why manipulation and gaslighting is so effective and universally, right? Across the board, because there is that element.
Yes. All right, so let's get to the last stage, which is fear or violence. So when the manipulator begins to threaten you, or you feel threatened, or they make you feel threatened that they may leave you or hurt themselves as a way of keeping you under their control with fear. I've heard that so many times. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
It can be very difficult to break free from someone who is using threats as a form of manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you leave me, or if you do this thing, or if you go reach out to that person, then I'm going to hurt myself, or I'm going to do this horrific thing, or I'm going to go buy this thing to hurt myself. Right? Whatever it is.
Can we sit on that for a second? Because as a therapist, I think, should I be admitting I have pet peeves? Sure. I'm a human. I have them.
Yeah.
But one of my biggest things is when I hear, well, maybe I don't know if I want to be with this person, or like I'm questioning breaking up with them, and maybe I tried, and they tell me, well, if you leave me, I'm going to kill myself. And then for the, person that's hearing that, it's, well, dang, now I'm responsible. Now I feel this guilt of I'm hurting them. I'm, trying to leave them or do X, Y, and Z, and that's going to be harmful to them. And it's like, hold up. Like, can we just think about how someone that is supposed to, love you and pour into you and support you in healthy ways, if they are telling you that if you choose yourself, right, or make a decision that feels best for you, that they will then harm themselves as a form to keep you because they want it and it's their benefit. Like, how selfish.
What your own decision? Yes, your own decisions are not in the benefit of the manipulator.
No, and it's like there's no regard for the other person's needs or wants, right? And I think it's been romanticized as, oh my gosh, like they love me so much that they would die without me, right? Nice. Like they can't see themselves living without me, so like, this is the person for me, right? Like, I just need to stay with them because who else is going to love me like that? And it's like, wrong idea of what a healthy relationship should look like.
It's like googly eyes, but like amazed or like in awe that someone would like not live.
Yeah.
If you weren't in their lives.
And I also want to put this preference, right? Like that I don't think a lot of the times people say that, like, such as like, if you leave me, I'm going to hurt myself, right? Or I don't want to be here anymore. I don't think a lot of people really think about that as manipulation when they say it. I think in the moment, people really feel, whether it's an anxious attachment or this codependency, right? That really feels like my life is tied to this person, right? And without them, I can't imagine, right? Like living or like finding any happiness. And so I do want to say that, right? Of like, intention does not equal impact, right? And so you don't have to necessarily be like, I'm trying to manipulate and gaslight my partner, right? And for it to still have a really negative impact and be harmful and just not healthy of a dynamic in any relationship.
No, because I'm even thinking of like the codependency or that enmeshment with parents and their adult kids. And then adult kids are still maybe like unconsciously expected or consciously expected to still make the decision the parent wants. Yeah. Like, you better go to that school, or you better date this type of person. Yes. Or you better choose this kind of career. Yeah. And when you don't, or you make a decision that's your own, okay, well then I'm disowning you. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I'm going to cut off any financial support. Right. I don't want to be a part of your life. Actually, yikes. This is the scary season.
It is scary, and it sucks, right? Because, like, I think it comes up a lot, right? Like, hearing that, I'm glad you brought up the aspect of, like, parents, right, with their children. Is like, I've heard that before, too, of, like, parents openly making comments of, like, if you move out, or if you do this, like, I'm going to kill myself, or I won't be here, or X, Y, and Z. And it's like, that's a lot of pressure and responsibility to put on someone else.
I've heard it multiple times around someone's gender identity or sexual orientation. Of like using the guilt tripping and using like this fear or threats of, I'm going to take away X, Y, and Z, or what about your family, and like all the things about what it can mean about your soul and like emotional well-being. And I'm like, hold on, time out. Let's just pause.
Right. Yes, it's heavy, right? And I think when you think about it like that too, it makes sense of why it's so hard to just get out of that dynamic or to challenge it, right? Because a lot of times it feels like this pressure boulder of responsibility of like, I have to make decisions or do things based on what someone else is telling me to do, or I will be a bad guy and I will be responsible for bad things happening.
Yep. Like the manipulator makes it seem like the loss is so unbearable.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I'm sure, like, to some degree, like, it's hard. But then again, then it's like, okay, when is it that other person's responsibility to work on their stuff?
Exactly.
So, again, that could be a whole other episode.
Yeah, literally.
But, okay.
Okay. So, let's segue.
Yes. Okay. So, thinking about types of gaslighting, right? Like, we've kind of talked about the manipulation, right? Strategies, stages of it. We've seen how that kind of ties in, but also gaslighting, I feel like kind of falls under the umbrella, but in a different way of manipulation as like a bigger category. Thinking about different types of gaslighting, again,
I didn't even know there was different types.
I know. Isn't that, when I research, it's like finding all kinds of things.
Yeah, love it.
Yes. And I appreciate of breaking it down, because like some people might just think of like the generic definition that they hear and be like, oh, well, I can't really like resonate with that. But then it's like when you break it down into various types, it's like, I can see where that comes up. So again, listeners, like maybe this is a point to say, like, as you're listening to this, like if anything resonates, or if our body responds, or maybe if you feel like I need a break and I feel overwhelmed when you hear this, could be like a clue for us to cue in on. So the first one we're going to talk about is denial gaslighting. So this is, I feel like something that we're more commonly hearing, right? Of like someone is outright just denying that events, statements, or behaviors that they did ever happened, right? Like even when there's clear evidence. Like if I was to say, Ash, like I know that you texted someone saying this mean things, and I have texting proof right here, a screenshot, and you're like, that's a lie, that's fabricated, like I never did that. Like that happens a lot. Like we see that.
I'm thinking of like traffic stops, and there's like actual evidence that you hit that car or you ran that red light.
And then you're like, no, I didn't. Ain't no way. You're the problem here.
Right.
But the whole point, I think, of denial gaslighting is really it is leading the victim or the person that is being gaslit to question their memory and perception of things. Again, going back to I'm losing the sense of trust in myself, right? Or being able to tell what reality is. Like, that is a big point behind manipulation and gaslighting, right, to the benefit of the manipulator. And so this is like one of those ways that very clearly comes up. So example of this, right, like you might hear or have heard before is as simple as like, oh, I never said that, like you're imagining that, or like someone else told you that, you know. So like very dismissive, very invalidating about it. The next one is countering gaslighting. So this is when we challenge or dispute the victim's thoughts, their memories or feelings, and we start to really cause that person to doubt their own mental state, right? And this one, I think, is when I hear, so I read a lot of like psychological mystery type books, and this is what I hear a lot in terms of like making people feel insane, right? Or making them question their mental state in general, right? Like an example of this is as simple as like the manipulator questioning, like, are you sure that's what happened? You know, like you forget things or your memory is not the best. And it's like, and it could be something as like maybe I made a comment like a week ago of like, my gosh, I can't remember why I walked into this room. Like my memory's going. And then that is used against you in situations like this. And then you're like, well, my memory has been, you know, like I couldn't remember where my car keys were. So it's like almost, again, using that information against you, which honestly, in the grand scheme of things, like a lot of this is like really complex thinking to some degree of how we manipulate and gaslight. And it's like, that takes a lot of energy and thought, which also blows my mind. But moving on. Trivializing gaslighting. So this is when someone is going to belittle or demean the victim's emotions or their concerns. So making them feel like they're overreacting or they're being too sensitive. How many of us have been told that? My favorite line is being called dramatic, right? Like, I have heard that a million times, right? Especially when it's followed by, it's not that big of a deal. Not only is that super invalidating in my feelings, right? But again, it makes you question, like, am I having an appropriate response? Like, am I the problem here?
Exactly.
Because you're telling me I shouldn't be feeling or reacting X, Y, and Z way, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So it gets really confusing.
Ugh.
Next one is diverting gaslighting. So this is when we change the subject or shift the focus to avoid being held accountable. Kind of like we were talking about earlier. So this is where like let's say, right, like you tell me like you're accusing me of something, right?
I see
like
this a lot in couples.
Right. Yeah. Like maybe you're telling me that, you know, I lied to you about going away this weekend. I just didn't want to hang out with you. Right. And then instead of me even like acknowledging that statement, right, or holding myself accountable to be like, yeah, that's true or not, I'll then be like, okay, well, you're the one who went on a girls' weekend trip 2 months ago and didn't invite me.
Yeah.
Like completely unrelated. Yeah. Right. But then it makes you as the victim be like, well,
yeah,
like, is that true? Is that something like deserving of you then doing this to me kind of thing?
Exactly.
Like, again, just questioning our reality and what's going on.
Oh, that gives me the ick.
I know. Withholding gaslighting. So this is pretending not to understand or refusing to listen to the victim's concerns or their feelings that they're bringing up and really just making them feel unimportant or unreasonable. So thinking about like, if I was to bring a problem to you and you're like, I just don't have time to deal with this, right? Or like, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like, this doesn't make sense kind of thing. Like, that's a way to kind of shut me down, right? Like, and so then it almost like turns this sense of I'm trying to hold you accountable and express things, but you can't handle that. So then you're going to make me feel like, what is this right now? You know? Or like, this is not something that like I have time to worry about. Very dismissive, very invalidating. Last one. No, not last one. Yes, last one. Okay. Gaslighting through isolation. Again, we talked about this, right? Like, this is when we manipulate someone to isolate from their support systems, right? And this can be done by suggesting that those people are unreliable, or that they're out to get us, or they don't care about us, or that the manipulator cares more about the victim than their support system does. And like a common thing of this is like, your friends don't really care about you. I'm the only one who understands you. Right? Like, or I understand you the best. So it's this very much, again, that power dynamic of like holding the manipulator as like on this pedestal over the victim here. You know, like, I need to be your top and only person for that power and control. So that is some types of gaslighting to kind of think about.
I feel like that last one could be seen or related to a lot more within yourself. Like, no one understands me. No one gets me. Yeah. Like, I gotta be there for myself type.
Ooh, that hyper independence.
Sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
Isolated.
Yes.
And like almost like justifying like why. You know, you can't hang out with people, or why, like, you can't hold yourself accountable for hurting someone else.
Yeah. Yes, man. Like, I can't be the problem kind of thing.
Literally.
Man, well, then that makes me feel like that probably is someone who manipulates or gaslights other people, too, right?
Exactly. Okay, so let's talk about the damage.
Oof.
The damage of manipulation and gaslighting. Short term and long term.
Yeah.
So we touched on them a little bit as we were talking about them, but first and obvious one is like confusion and self-doubt.
Yes.
So that's that mental fog, that feeling of uncertainty, questioning yourself, and like doubting reality. Like, is this really happening to me? Like, how did I find myself in this situation? Like, or how am I end up feeling this way again? Yeah. You know, or like, how did I get here?
Yeah. Like, this concept of, like, I met this really great person, and they, you know, presented themselves as one way, but then things have switched, and now I don't know what to believe, kind of thing. Yeah. You know?
Yes. Anxiety and stress is another. So that constant emotional tension. Also to take note of, like, how your body feels with constant anxiety and stress.
Yep. Yes.
Right? Like, did we develop any other, like, illness? Or, like, chronic illness during this time? Right? A lowered self-esteem. So, constant criticism, undermining, invalidation erodes a person's self-worth. Feelings of incompetent or inadequacy. I could definitely relate to that one. Like, if you're already struggling with developing like a solid sense of self, and then you're met with like these gaslighting tactics or like the stages of manipulation, then you're already like chipping away at your not so solid self-esteem.
Right. Well, and that needs to be, I think, for the manipulator or the gaslighter, right? Like, they want the victim to have a lower self-esteem, because then that's going to be easier for them to manipulate and coerce and gaslight for their own purposes and gain.
Yeah, like almost like a part of their goal is the person's self-worth is based on
them,
and their criteria.
It's that dependency.
Yeah. Another short-term thing that we notice is guilt and shame. So feeling guilty, feeling shameful, being made to feel like you're overly responsible for the manipulator's emotions may lead to feeling like everything goes wrong is your fault.
Yep.
When it's actually not.
Yikes.
And then an obvious is emotional exhaustion. OMG. So that's that feeling of like draining, helplessness, fatigue.
Right.
Maybe it's so intense where you don't feel anything. You're like numb. Literally numb. Or you're like, this is like really emotional and sad, but I can't cry. Like your body is so tired.
Yeah, just like shutting down. Yeah.
Or maybe you are sleeping more.
Right. Yeah.
Or changes in your appetite.
Oh, yeah. I think it could be like I think a lot of depressive type symptoms can come up. And also, too, emotional exhaustion is an element that probably the manipulator wants present in terms of, like, I want to break someone down enough that they're emotionally depleted and exhausted to not fight me and to just follow along with what I say and want them to do.
Yes. Oh, wow. So, like, that reminds me of this that I've been hearing recently in session sometimes, is that it's just easier to give in.
Yes.
It's just easier to go along with
just do whatever
they're saying or whatever they want. So I don't have to clean up or do whatever it is.
Yeah. I don't have to fight it. Yeah.
The fight.
Right.
Basically. Or like the consequences or like the guilt trips and like all the things.
Yes. Which, can we just call that what that is? A survival mechanism that is coming into play because you feel like, right, like I just have to like almost blend in or like make myself small to survive through this.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even if it's not something that's like physical abuse, right, that threatens your safety in that regard, it still is a survival type mechanism. Does that mean that it's healthy?
Right.
No. But it means that like our system is like, I don't know what else to do other than like just shut down and become a shell of myself to get through this.
Yeah. Yikes.
Okay.
So let's talk about some long terms, because that's definitely a long term
issue. That is long term.
So another one is like chronic anxiety and depression. So managing that, like it's not just like a day or two or like a moment in time or like an argument or whatever it is. It's like months or weeks, and you're managing, and you have to make lifestyle changes.
Right. Yeah.
To treat it.
Yes.
Erosion of trust. So losing the sense of trust in others and yourself. Finding it hard to form healthy relationships in the future. I think that's a pretty big one. Like wanting to just also notice, like, I'm responsible in this. Like,
yeah.
And I get that. I understand like that pathway of thinking, but also it could be very dangerous in building your own self-trust again.
100%. Right? Like, and I think too this is a really big side effect that we see even as therapists of individuals that maybe got out of a manipulation, gaslighting type situation, or an abusive, right, in whatever way that it presents. This is a big part of that sense of like, how can I trust myself to meet and form healthy relationships, and also how do I trust other people to not repeat what I just went through?
Yeah.
You know, and I think through that is like almost a self-sabotaging cycle.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
That's a whole other podcast, too.
Literally, okay. Another long-term damage we see is the loss of self-identity. So you lose touch with your sense of self. You have trouble identifying your own values, needs, and preferences. And when you do, maybe you're noticing like some judgments coming up about it.
Yeah.
Or finding hard to like find value or worth in it. Really tough one as well.
Right. Well, and it makes me think of too, right? Like if we're being manipulated and gaslit, like the whole purpose of that, right, is to give or be whatever the manipulator wants. So in that, we like lose the sense of self because we're like totally throwing away our needs, our wants, our boundaries, maybe even like our values, right? Because we're just in the system of like constantly giving to the manipulator.
They turn into what they want.
Exactly. Like, and so then on the outside of it, it's like, who even am I? Right? Outside of this manipulation and gaslighting.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a hard one.
So another one is social isolation. So the struggle to rebuild connections after a relationship, an abusive or manipulative relationship. Difficulty setting boundaries. So this erodes a person's ability to assert their needs and set boundaries, and may lead to further toxic relationships or patterns of self-neglect. Super, super important to like notice not just what it looked like to maybe not have any boundaries, but like what didn't feel good and healthy at all.
Right.
And what does it feel like now when you do establish, right? Or you do communicate those boundaries. It may feel like awkward or like bad or like, you're foreign a little bit.
Right.
It's like something new for the first time.
Right. Or I feel like guilt and a responsibility for someone else's, like, maybe even like poor reaction to me setting a boundary. Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's a hard dynamic to kind of get out of and rewire our brain.
So the last one is emotional dysregulation. So the struggle to manage your own emotions like anger, sadness, numbness, difficulty processing your feelings, maybe not even being aware of what you're feeling.
Yeah.
I've noticed that so much. You're like, you're feeling something, but you don't know what it is.
Right. Yeah.
And like that struggle to identify like what even is it, number one, and then how do I want to relate to it?
Right. Yes.
Because my brain only knows the way the manipulator's brain would relate to it.
Yeah. Yes.
How do I want to like actually relate to this feeling?
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And also too, of like, if I, was being manipulated or gaslit, then a big part of that was being invalidated and dismissed of my own feelings. So I might not even have like a basic identification of emotions, what that looks like, what that feels like, and to be able to trust that emotions are okay. Well, because again, that whole erosion of trust in myself was completely obliterated.
Yeah.
Right? So it is hard, but.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Segue into the gooder. Oh my gosh. Gooder. Is that even a word?
It is now.
I don't think it is. But I appreciate the validation. Okay. Segue into the maybe more uplifting part.
Yes.
Which is, how can we identify, break free of manipulation, gaslighting, right? And I think too, also taking consideration of like, how can I hopefully call myself out and be accountable if I am manipulating or gaslighting other people. So first thing is recognize the signs, right? I think this is like basic principle of like, I need to have knowledge and awareness around this to be able to move forward with anything, right? So whether that's like listening to this podcast and stuff is coming up and resonating, doing research, whatever it may be, right? Like learning what those signs and aspects of this are. Then it's trusting your intuition and gut, which can be kind of hard, right? If we are feeling like this whole sense of loss of trust in ourselves and things like that. But I think especially if we're looking at this from like a beginning type stage here, it's listening of like, something doesn't feel right or something feels off, right? Even if it feels like everything's really good, right? It's like, is it too good? Like, what am I listening to that intuition gut coming up around that? Setting and enforcing boundaries. This is huge. And this is like, I think one of the hardest things that people struggle with in a lot of senses, of boundaries being okay. And that doesn't mean you're selfish. And we are not responsible for someone who cannot handle our boundaries.
Yeah. And
like
a lot of the work we do here in therapy is help clients identify what their boundaries are and how to like enforce them.
Yes.
And communicate them.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's like one of the most disheartening things that a lot of people get met with, is like this idea of like, I set boundaries, but then someone has a really poor reaction to it, or is disrespectful, or X, Y, and Z, and then I feel guilt. I feel shame that I expressed this boundary or set this boundary, and so then maybe like I don't follow through with it. I think if we're thinking about the manipulation, gaslighting behind that, if a person knows, if I have a poor reaction to them trying to set a boundary or put kind of like this distance between us, and I know if I react poorly, then they're going to break down that boundary and not follow through, then we're just playing into what they want.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Which is a gross thing in general. But limiting contact or distancing yourself, right? Like, sometimes we just need to be like, this person and their energy and their intentions is not good. Or maybe, like, they just need to figure their stuff out, right? And I just need to have that distance and that be okay. Yeah. You know? Because I don't owe it to anyone to just, like, deal with and succumb to that, like, abuse, manipulation, whatever we want to call that, just because this other person is expressing that and trying to create that dynamic. Lean on your support system. Like, obviously a big part of it is the isolation, so we need to be able to have those people in our corner that we can lean on to kind of have a reality check, right? That we know will have our backs, that are there for us in the good, the bad, right? Like, all the things in between, and to be able to, like, give us that support without any manipulation, like, kind of infurious, is that a word? Intentions behind it, right? Like, they're there and supporting you because they love you and they want to be, not because they want you to give them something in return. You know, document the truth. I think this is an interesting concept, especially like with people that will do common gaslighting or manipulation tactics and try to make you feel like the crazy one, quote unquote, is like, document that and give yourself kind of this like affirmation, notes tab, whatever, to be like, hey, like, they're going to try to tell you that you're the problem and you're X, Y, and Z, and here's your reminder of this is why you're not, right? Exactly. Like, yes. So how can we help ourselves out in that category too? Building our self-esteem, I think that's a given, right? Like, we talked about that. Like, we have to have this sense of self to be able to combat and also be, I think, just like, I don't want to say immune, right, to manipulation and gaslighting, but to be able to call it out and have this awareness and have this sense of, like, I deserve better than that. Oh, yeah. And I'm not going to let you try to do that to me because you are insecure or you need something. Right. Right? Therapy and professional help, obviously. Yes. Like, I think that's a wonderful thing that can be worked through no matter where you're at in the stages of manipulation and gaslighting or what your situation looks like. I think that's a big necessity because it is a huge, like, mind shift and wiring of, like, who we are and, like, how we even, like, approach different things. It's not easy. And so definitely seek help. Like, it's not a bad thing to need help. We all need it. We all deserve to have therapy in a safe space to talk about things. Plan an exit strategy. So I think a lot of times we hear an exit strategy when it becomes, like, more severe cases in the sense of, like, physical abuse, right? Like, safety concerns. But I think an exit strategy can be for any type of situation, like, right?
Even a social thing.
Yeah. Like, if it's like this person that, like, I was building a friendship with just doesn't feel like they have good intentions for me and I'm going to put distance, that's an exit strategy, right? Like, maybe I'm not going to respond to their text messages or, you know, set a boundary kind of thing with that. Like,
or I know this person that treated me this way is going to be at this one party or this one function.
Right.
And how am I going to either interact with them as little as possible or not interact with them at all, or how am I going to take care of myself after this, because just being in the same space with them is energy sucking.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And then last one is practice self-care. Yes. I mean, again, it's kind of a cliche term, but we have to be able to give ourselves the things that we need to be able to function, grow, nourish ourselves, all the things, right? So are we doing things to build up the reservoirs of our cups in terms of that, or are we, like, letting them deplete and giving ourselves, unfortunately, like, into a space where it could be easier to get manipulated and gaslit because, like, we're exhausted, right? Or, like, we don't have that kind of, like, reservoir to pull from or resources to pull from in that. So take care of yourself, please.
Yes.
But I think, kind of like summing up here as we wrap up this episode, is a key highlight that I kind of want to leave us with is anything that you take from this episode. I hope it's that the idea of knowing that manipulation and gaslighting are about control, right? It is about someone needing control for whatever reason, right? There's a million things that we could input in that. They're designed to erode your confidence, your sense of self, and your own trust in your mind, right? But learning to recognize this, like the tactics, the strategies, all these things, and being able to assert your boundaries is how you're going to be able to reclaim your power and protect your mental well-being.
Period. Mic drop on
that. Yes.
Well, in the breath of wrapping up, we have, as per usual, some quotes. But we decided to have 2 quotes this episode.
We couldn't decide.
Yeah, couldn't decide. We need one for manipulation and gaslighting. So, first one is, manipulation thrives in silence and confusion. The moment you name it, you take back your power.
Yeah, call that out. Call it out.
Take back your power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And gaslighting distorts reality. When you learn to trust your inner voice, you dismantle the control they seek over you.
Dismantle that control.
Literally dismantled.
I love the wording in this. It's like kind of powerful statements, even though it's like such small words with a big impact.
Yes, and like empowering, like self-empowerment.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? Yeah.
1000%.
All right, listeners. Well, also keep in mind, next month's episode is interesting, and I'm really excited for it too. And it's going to be called "This Too Shall Pass," which is about the feeling the things that you feel will always feel crappy.
Yeah, or just negative, or it'll never get better kind of thing.
Like being stuck in that rut of like,
mm-hmm.
it's always going to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
And like feeling that like permanence of it's just going to be like this all the time.
Right.
Whether that be like a situation or relationship or how you relate to something.
Or life in general, honestly.
In general, right? I'm even thinking about like with grief right now.
Yeah.
It's a hard one.
That's a hard one.
But anyways, so stay tuned for that.
Yes.
Okay. Super excited. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for tuning into another episode. And we will see you next time. Bye.